Hello everyone. So today we'll be talking about theories of learning. As we have reviewed what is learning and conditions necessary for learning to take place, we are going to be talking about theories of learning. And I've also explained in some videos in Psychology 101, we believe in principle of causality when we're talking about science, and principle of determinism, that nothing just happens. When a mango falls from a tree, there is an explanation. Science don't just take that thing that just happen without any cause, right? So they provided a theory of gravity that states that anything that goes up will come down, right? So that is how, as behaviorist scientists, psychologists, we're interested in individual behavior. Any behavior we see, we're interested in what happens, right? So we should know what is a theory, right? So a theory is a statement or a set of statement that explains reason for natural occurrences or reason for a particular phenomenon, right? Now, bringing some things to us before we go into the theory I want to talk about today. We should know at this point what is a behavior. A behavior is anything that our response to external or internal stimulus. Behavior is individual's response to internal or external stimulus. That is a behavior. So, and behavior could be overt or covert. Overt, the ones we can observe, talking, jumping, clapping. Covert are the one we cannot observe. His mindset, his pains, like until he says something, you don't know what he's thinking or how he's feeling, he or she is feeling, right? That is covert. Then what is stimulus? Stimulus is very important. We discuss it here because remember in the school of thought we talked about the behavioral school of thought that emphasize that everything is about learning from the environment. As we're exposed to stimulus in the environment, that we learn from there, right? Because the classical condition we're about to talk about is a theory under the behavioral school of thought. So, what is a stimulus? A stimulus is anything that can elicit a response. Anything that can elicit a response is referred to as a stimulus. Yes. So, when you are sleeping, you are responding to a physiological situation. When you are thirsty and you want to drink water, you are behaving, and that is a response to the lateral hypothalamus telling you, I am thirsty, right? When anything you engage in, anything that when you want to put on the air conditioner or the ventilator, you understand perhaps you are responding to an external stimulus, the temperature in the room, right? All these are stimulus. So anything that can elicit or cause you to respond to it is a stimulus. When you hear your name or your phone rings and you stretch out or you answer to that name, right? Response to this stimulus, whether internal stimulus or external stimulus, are called behavior. Now, learning, a relative permanent change in behavior. And we are here again, we want to know what happens when learning takes place. How did learning happen? Theories come to tell you why things happen, right? Explain the reason why learning takes place in this situation. The first theory we're talking about today is classical conditioning theory by Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov is a Russian physiologist, yes, and in 1909, he was busy studying scientifically the physiology of eating in a dog. The physiology that goes on when the dog is eating. He discovered that whenever he brings food, the dog salivates and everything. So in his activity and trying to study all of these things, he serendipitously discovered classical conditioning theory. And this theory simply states that learning takes place by association, paired association. That learning takes place when a stimulus, when we are repeatedly exposed to a particular stimulus, right? Example, if you see a person that is repeatedly exposed to bully or say abuse, learning will take place. The person may grow up becoming one inferiority complex, low self-esteem, or even very aggressive person, right? That is just a repeated pairing, right? But we are going to take it gradually. Now, paired association. When you pair a behavior with a particular stimulus, or you pair two stimulus at the same time, learning will take place. A good example of classical conditioning is lightning and thunder. Why do, when it's raining and lightning comes and people runs away, enters their houses or takes cover? This is because over time we have seen that when it's raining and lightning comes up, that the next you expect, the next seconds, most times is thunderstorm. Once you see lightning, it's almost like an announcement to thunderstorm. Not every time, but say 90% of the time, you see that you see thunder or you hear thunder come immediately after the lightning. So you discover that humans naturally have been conditioned to respond to this lightning, or to learn that thunder is next and they will run or they will take cover, right? This is simply classical conditioning in action. Learning through association. Learning through associating a stimulus to another stimulus. Associating a stimulus to another stimulus because of that pairing. These things have been paired together over time, and you have learned to associate the second to the other one. Okay, imagine when a thief has continuously come with a pastor to preach to you, right? And daily and every time that occurs, they come together. Next time that automatically you have conditioned to view the other person as a good person, at least as a friend, right? That is paired association. You have associated the pastor attributes to the other person, right? Now, going down to classical conditioning, there are things we must learn for this course. What is unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned stimulus, conditioned response, neutral stimulus? These are 5 things. Unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned stimulus, conditioned response, and neutral stimulus. If you understand these 5 as they work, you understand, you have learned classical conditioning theory. Unconditioned theory, when you say unconditionally, like unconditioned love, right? There is no reason. You just see that love flow, right? That is same with unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned stimulus is a kind of stimulus that you don't need anything or any other backup or to pair it with any other stimulus so that the stimulus will be able to elicit a response. No. That is unconditioned stimulus. There is no need for any pairing. There is no need for another stimulus before this kind of stimulus will elicit a response from the organism. That kind of stimulus is called unconditioned stimulus. Please take note. You will need this information till you graduate. They will be coming often, right? Then unconditioned response. Unconditioned response is also the natural and unconditioned, or the kind of behavior that we also give to an unconditioned stimulus, right? We are expected to naturally respond, or the organism naturally is built, or yes, built to respond. So there is nothing that caused it, or when I say nothing that caused it, the thing that causes natural responses is a natural phenomenon. For example, in Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning, I'm going to explain now, he naturally brings food to the dog. And once he brings, this dog will jump and salivate and start eating. Immediately the dog sees the food coming, he will start salivating. And before he start eating, the same way we also salivate when we see food, right? These are naturally. What resulted to that? The unconditioned stimulus. The food there naturally is something that can elicit a response, right? If I bring a book or a paper, or say an ordinary say like this wire, right? This cannot make you to salivate. This cannot elicit any response naturally to you. If I just sit, for example, right? But food is an unconditioned stimulus and can elicit a response. There are a lot of other unconditioned stimulus we may not need to talk about, right? But for Ivan Pavlov's dog, he brought unconditioned stimulus, and the dog naturally gave also unconditioned response because it is not learned, it is inbuilt. Maturity or physiologically stored, right? Or installed. That is that too. Then we go to neutral stimulus. Neutral stimulus naturally cannot elicit a response. If I ring a bell, can that make you want to eat? Can that make you salivate? Can that make you happy? If ringing a bell makes you happy, then you have learned to associate that bell to something, memory in the past. Things you enjoyed maybe in secondary school, primary school, right? So, but naturally, a bell cannot elicit a response, right? But here, Ivan Pavlov used it as a neutral stimulus. We call them neutral stimulus, right? Now, how did the theory, the experiment go in 1909 with Ivan Pavlov? He continued pairing the food and the bell, meaning that when he brings the food, he brings a bell. When he brings the food, he will ring the bell and come. Remember, another version of his experiment is with food and light. When he comes, he light up a bulb. When he comes, he light up a bulb. But I'm using that of the bell, right? So Ivan Pavlov continued pairing this unconditioned stimulus, the food, with a neutral stimulus, the bell. And the dog, often and not knowing, right, just naturally continue responding and salivating to the food. Continue salivating. Not knowing. In classical conditioning, one thing you need to know is that the learning takes place, the organism is a passive learner. The learning takes place unknowingly. Yes, the organism is not making any active effort to learn, but not knowing that he or she is learning. Yes, we use this a lot in learning environment. So let's continue. So, one day came, right, in the experiment. At a point, Ivan Pavlov didn't bring food, but he rang the bell. So you see the dog salivating and running, coming, thinking there will be food. At that point, that bell that came alone has become a conditioned stimulus, because this dog has been conditioned to view it as a stimulus that can elicit a response. It has been conditioned in the body and the brain of the memory of the dog as a conditioned stimulus, something that always comes with that food. You see, and what would the dog do? That salivation he gave at that point is called conditioned response. Yes, and that is how the learning has taken place. At this point, you say acquisition has taken place. Right? This is classical conditioning theory. This is how it works. Make sure you understand the major tenets I said here, that learning takes place as a reason of what? Association. Learning by association and contiguity. The reason for that contiguity is that they move together. Paired association learning. Stimulus response learning. Right? There is a stimulus and there is a response. There is a pairing of conditioned and neutral and non-conditioned stimulus before learning took place, resulting to conditioned response. That bell simply became a conditioned response. Yes, So quickly, I would want to touch some little things about this, some of the learning principles here of classical conditioning. We have generalization, we have spontaneous recovery, discrimination, acquisition. So let me start immediately. So acquisition is when that learning has taken place. Yes. Unconditional stimulus against unconditional response. Then neutral stimulus plus unconditional stimulus will still give you unconditioned response. That is, but pairing has already started to happen, right? Now, how do we know that learning has taken place? The conditioned stimulus came alone, the bell, and before you knew, the dog jumped and salivated, thinking there would be food, and that is called conditioned response. Acquisition, learning acquisition, learning has taken place. Now, knowledge acquisition. So, generalization occurs in this is another principle here. When the dog, Ivan Pavlov's dog, did not only respond to that bell that Ivan comes with, but even when somebody comes and maybe rings the doorbell, we've got a visitor, right? And then the person rings a bell, the doorbell, the dog will rush thinking it's food. Generalization. Or maybe he's playing at the environment, and by the other wall or side of the wall outside, a bicycle is passing and the bicycle rings a bell. The dog will run towards the wall thinking food is coming, right? This generalization. This is why you see some children, when you tell them this is your auntie, they will want to call any woman, any grown woman or lady an auntie, right? When you tell them mama, they want to call anybody mama, everybody. This is generalization level. Then discrimination is another learning that can occur, another principle of learning that can occur when an organism is able to discriminate or differentiate between, for example, the dog here now, Ivan Pavlov's dog, between the bell that comes with food and the bell of the doorbell and the bell of the bicycle. So whereas generalization in relationship, you see some guys say all girls are bad because of one experience or two, right? Let's say one experience, two experience, three experience, four experience. That is paired association, right? So this continuous pairing happens, and they'll say no, I don't think the female folk is this, or the male folk is terrible, or this kind of thing, right? This is generalization, right? And it's maladaptive, it's not good. So discrimination, on the other hand, will expect you to understand that your experiences with all those girls are specific and contextual and dependent on those folks that you dealt with or you related to. So when you're able to discriminate, when I mean discrimination, differentiate between, like the dog was able to do with the bells, right? Then I think you have a better, in psychology, one of the therapeutic principles, that discrimination is very important, right? Then we have extinction here. Extinction occurs when an individual, when the repeated conditioned stimulus is introduced without any reinforcement, right? The only thing that can reinforce an organism are unconditioned stimulus. Yes, if the bell, Ivan Pavlov continued to ring the bell, and the dog will rush and salivate, conditioned stimulus response, right? No food, you just sigh and go back. Come again, that's you come again, no food, and then another time you ring the bell, and you come again, salivate, no food. The dog will learn not to respond to that dog and that bell again. That is called unlearning, and it's called extinction. So this is when extinction takes place. Repeated exposure to a stimulus without any reinforcement leads to what? Extinction. So assuming the Ivan Pavlov continued to do this, and the dog unlearns the situation or the behavior and do not respond again, and Ivan Pavlov drops the bell, and just continue feeding 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. All of a sudden, a day came, he rang the bell. Oh, the dog will remember the good old days and salivate and rush. This is what we call spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery takes place in learning, a situation where you feel like, I will bring it as an advice here, when you are reading like a first year psychology student, you are hearing a lot of things and you are not understanding. Oh, I don't know what I'm reading, it's not entering, it's not doing. Just keep reading repeatedly, reading them. You understand that before exam, you will understand without any effort. Those things you read and understood and you forgot, during the exam, going back, you will understand with ease. This is spontaneous recovery in action. So, see you in the next video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.